In the beginning, there was the JRPG, and the JRPG was without form and void. And Yuji Horii said, "Let there be Dragon Quest!" And behold, it was okay. It was well put together, but it was really small and bare bones, more of a tech demo than anything. And then Yuji Horii said, "Let there be Dragon Quest 2! And behold, it was so close, huge improvement, but they never quite worked out the balance, it's a bit janky. And then, in the year 3 in the Erdrick Reckoning, Yuji Horii said, "Let there be Dragon Quest 3! And behold, it was very good. Hey everybody, this is Captain Resurrector, and today we'll be looking at one of the all-time classic Japanese RPGs, Dragon Quest III: The Seeds of Salvation. The Dragon Quest series was the brainchild of scenario writer Yuji Horii and programmer Koichi Nakamura, two young game developers at Enix who shared a love of Western computer RPGs. They were joined by character designer Akira Toriyama of Dragon Ball fame, as well as composer Koichi Sugiyama. These four were the driving force behind all of the Dragon Quest games through 5, when Nakamura left the company, and the other three carried on with future sequels until the deaths of Toriyama and Sugiyama in recent years. This stability in the creative team has lent the series a remarkable consistency over time. Horii and Nakamura set out to make an RPG with elements of Wizardry's battle system and Ultima's world design, but simplified enough to be easily understood by new players and easily played on an NES controller. That first Dragon Quest was perhaps too simple, with only one hero fighting one monster at a time in a relatively small game world, but it laid a solid groundwork for the sequels, which unsimplified the gameplay little by little until the perfect balance was finally achieved in the masterpiece we're reviewing today. I'm gonna go ahead and lay my biases on the table right away. In case you couldn't tell, I am a massive Dragon Quest fan. Since I first discovered them in middle school, I've played every mainline entry besides 10 at least once, and they're the first games I think of when I hear the term RPG. This has been my favorite game franchise for most of my life, maybe tied with Kirby, and I've never stopped coming back and losing myself in one of these once every year or two. They're the gold standard that I compare all other RPGs to, and at this point they're like an old friend to me. Dragon Quest III specifically is the oldest RPG I've played that I would recommend wholeheartedly to a new player without any caveats. It's a truly timeless classic that needs no modernization to keep you engrossed from start to finish. But in the year 39 in the Erdrick Reckoning, they modernized it anyway, and it's everything I ever would have wanted it to be. Gorgeous pixel art 3D hybrid graphics, full orchestral soundtrack, some additional scenes that flesh out the story without spoiling its straightforward charm, a new hard mode, a new post-game dungeon I haven't played yet at the time of this writing. It's glorious. This is the version I'll be reviewing today because it's new and shiny and I wanted it. A word on the series structure real quick. With any long series of numbered games like this, the first question you get from a new player is, do I have to play them in order? The short answer is no. Each Dragon Quest is decently self-contained. The long answer is, some of the stories are connected and some aren't. Relevant to today's video, the first 3 games are a trilogy, with 2 being a direct sequel to 1, and 3 taking place in the distant past of the first 2. Together they're usually referred to as the Erdrick trilogy. The endgame of 3 makes several references to 1, but these amount to cameos for the fans. A new player will enjoy this game just fine without the added context, and it's one of the best Dragon Quests anyway, so you might want to start here. The game begins, as a billion JRPGs have begun ever since, with the young protagonist waking up on the first day of her big adventure. Or at least that's how it opened back in the day. In the remake, you have a dream where a heavenly voice asks you a series of personality questions and tests of moral character. This sets your hero's starting personality, which is a mechanic we'll get into before long. After your personality is set, you wake up on your 16th birthday in the city of Eliahan. The realm is under threat from a growing force of monsters led by the archfiend Baramos. Your father, the mighty warrior Ortega, left on a quest to slay Baramos when you were still a baby, never to be seen again, and you've dreamed all your childhood of following in his footsteps and killing Baramos yourself. The king approves of your mission and sends you with his blessing to gather companions and set off. Your mother is supportive of your decision, but she's clearly worried sick. You create a party of up to 4 characters by recruiting them at the pub, choosing from several classes and appearance options. There's a pretty standard selection of classes, like warriors that hit hard and get the best equipment, priests with healing magic, mages with attacking magic, as well as a few weird ones that have always seemed kind of useless to me, like the merchant. They even added a new monster wrangler class that gains abilities from the new monster hunting side quest. I'm not sure whether Toriyama got to design the monster wrangler and the new looks for the other classes before he died, or if a new artist made them, but they all fit in nicely. Incidentally, you don't pick a class for your protagonist, she gets her own special hero class that nobody else can use. Oddly, though you can pick different character designs and voices for your other characters, there's only one male and one female option for the hero, despite all the promotional material for the whole series stressing that the hero is supposed to be you, the player. Now, I'm being pretty non-literal with that anyway. I am not, nor have I ever been, a teenage girl, but it's odd that your self-insert is the least customizable character in the game. Each party member also gets some bonus points to put into their starting stats, as well as a randomly rolled personality. Now, I'm going to ramble about the personality system for a bit because I find it unaccountably weird. First off, the personalities are exclusive to Dragon Quest III's remakes. They were added to the SNES version and they haven't found their way into any future games either. Whenever a character levels up, they get randomly rolled increases to their stats, and that random stat growth is affected by their personality. There's a huge list of the different personalities and what they mean in-game, so you know which stats will grow faster or slower for that character. So far, this isn't that strange. Characters in RPGs often have a variable that determines their stat growth. In fact, the original Dragon Quest had a similar system, except it was invisible to the player. I believe there's something like this in Pokemon as well, and tying this subtle variable to personality descriptors does something to enhance the sense that these party members are pre-existing people from the game world that you bumped into at the pub, rather than mere stat sheets. The strange thing isn't the personalities, it's their mutability. All throughout the adventure, you find self-help books that permanently alter the personality of whoever reads them. Even weirder, there are various equipable accessories that change someone's personality as long as they're equipped. This makes the personalities feel much less inherent to the characters, especially odd given the whole BuzzFeed quiz at the start, and the usefulness of micromanaging your stat growth on that granular of a level seems suspect to me. Outside of routing a speedrun or a low-level challenge, I can't imagine bothering with the level of anal min-maxing that is implied here, putting on one accessory to influence a couple of level-ups then changing to another. If you're the kind of player who loves crunching the numbers and crafting your ideal overpowered party, you'll get more use out of this system than I did. I just equipped whatever and ignored the books. At the start of the game, you're confined to a single small island, which acts as a tutorial area. You have a couple of towns full of NPCs as well as a couple small dungeons to beat. This gives new players an area just big enough to learn the basic gameplay loop without risk of getting lost. Find a town, talk to everybody to get hints, buy the best equipment you can afford, grind outside for money and experience as necessary, and then tackle the dungeons to find better equipment and quest items. Your starting mission is extremely simple. Find a thief's key so you can get to the only teleportal off the island. As the game progresses, the quest structure opens up little by little, having a simple, linear set of quests with side excursions after you leave Eliahan, then a sprawling open world dotted with objectives that can be done in almost any order once you find a ship. This structure, leading the player through the first few objectives step by step and then gradually opening up, is one of the master strokes of the Dragon Quest games, making them much less intimidating at the start than something like Ultima, while retaining the open world exploration that made Ultima fun in the first place. This is a world you'll really want to take some time to lose yourself in as well. While most of the praise I heap on this game applies to any version, the new graphics for the HD-2D remake are a tremendous improvement. Squeenix opted for a mixture of detailed sprites inhabiting a 3D world, which to my understanding was first used in its current form in Octopath Traveler, then in a remake of Live Alive. This is the first of this so-called HD-2D line of games that I've played, and I think it's genuinely beautiful, and fitting for Dragon Quest considering how similar it is in concept to Dragon Quest VII's visuals. They really went all out on the environments in this version. The second I walked out into Eliahan for the first time, with the bright sun illuminating everything, birds flying around, the cloud shadows floating across the grass, cute little pixel people walking around on the cobblestone streets, I immediately felt like this was home, you know? And there's so many different views like this. The artists made a real point of giving each town and even each dungeon its own life. There's this room in the Thieves' Den with treasure and junk strewn about the place. There's the grand vista overlooking the pyramid from Ibis. There's the Portuguese-style blue and white tiling in Portoga Castle. There's the giant wall of hieroglyphics leading up to the Shrine of the Everbird. And the lighting of most areas changes with the day-night cycle, even in caves and the like. My personal favorite environment might be the Fairy Cave, with its glowing mushrooms, massive underground lakes, and towering elven statues. What was a generic cave area in the original, memorable mostly for the side quest that uses it, here becomes an aesthetic highlight. While you're taking in the scenery, much of your time will be spent fighting monsters. Akira Toriyama's monster designs are classic, and they're brought to life here with detailed and expressive pixel animation. I've always enjoyed the pun names in the modern localizations too, like One Man Army here, or Manticores and their weaker version Infanticores, and who doesn't love the Raven Lunatic? The battle system itself is nothing too complicated. You choose an action for each character, attacking, casting spells, using items, etc. Then everyone on both sides of the fight takes their turn in a random order, influenced by their speed stat. It's not rocket science or anything, but it's lent a lot of depth by the job system. Other than the hero, whose abilities are set in stone, you get to choose your own party makeup, and every set of classes will have their own strengths and weaknesses. Different classes get different spells, different stat growth, use different equipment, and so on. New to this version are non-spell abilities, which help to further differentiate the physical classes like warriors and martial artists, which could feel a bit samey in the original. On top of all this, a few hours into the game you reach All Trades Abbey, which just blows the whole system wide open and is the main reason for the game's replayability. Once a character reaches level 20, you can change their class here, starting over at level 1 with half their original stats and still remembering all their abilities and spells. This lets you custom craft all kinds of strange hybrid characters with high stats and any combination of abilities you can think of. There's also an optional dungeon near the Abbey, which allows you to change one character to the Sage class, a frankly overpowered spellcaster who learns all mage and priest magic, and it's also full of metal slimes for level grinding your newly changed characters. Once you find all trades, the only limits on your party composition are your own imagination and your willingness to grind. For my own party, I had Beatrice the Priest for healing, Shinyu the Martial Artist as my main damage dealer, and Leona the Monster Wrangler just because I wanted to try the new class. There's a whole new side quest spread across the entire game, where you can search out friendly monsters in all the towns and dungeons and in hidden spots on the overworld. They all have their own punny names in the grand Dragon Quest localization tradition. The more you find, the more abilities your Monster Wrangler learns. I personally didn't enjoy the monster hunting all that much, so I decided to change Leona into a sage as soon as I unlocked the option. I waited until Beatrice was high level and knew most of the best healing magic to turn her into a warrior, which resulted in a badass tanky paladin type. Shinyu I left alone. He was squishier than a warrior but hit like a truck in the endgame. The mid-game bosses probably would have been easier if I just went with a warrior though. You get the ship not long after unlocking All Trades Abbey, leading to the centerpiece of the game, the quest for the 6 orbs. You see, there's a shrine hidden away on a small frozen island that houses the sleeping Everbird Ramia. There's these 2 tiny priestesses guarding the bird's egg, speaking in unison. It's all very Mothra-esque. They tell you that the Everbird can only be revived with the 6 magical orbs, and the only path to Baramos' castle is through the air, so you have to seek out the balls all over the world. The orbs, for the most part, can be collected in any order, and some of them take multiple steps to find. The Silver Orb in particular takes center stage, requiring you to go on a massive chain of subquests that spans several hours and maybe half of the world map. Now, nobody would ever do these steps in a straight line in a first playthrough. The whole game world is sprinkled with orbs, other quest items that you need for the orbs, and hints for the subquests, many of which aren't even on the same continent as the thing they're hinting at. The orb quest is a long and meandering process of exploring everything, taking notes as you go, or using the new in-game recall system to take notes for you, and circling back around to places you've already been once you know what you're supposed to do there. This whole thing takes up maybe 2/3 of the game's runtime, and it's easily my favorite part. The orb quest plays out a bit differently in this remake because there are new bosses at certain points throughout the game, and 2 of these are slapped onto orb quests that used to be relatively easy. You can't really run straight to these orbs the second you get the ultimate key like you could in the original, because you're likely to be underpowered, especially for the stupid ghosts. I mean, what were they thinking with the ghosts? The difficulty balance of the remake is an interesting topic in itself. Now, I played the whole game on hard mode, so I can't speak definitively on normal mode, but it seems they were trying to strike a delicate balance here. In an attempt to make exploring more involved than it was back in the day, they sprinkled the whole game with hidden items that weren't there originally, primarily junk equipment and stat seeds. There are far more stat seeds in this remake than usual, which I assume makes the game easy on normal mode. But then hard mode is balanced with the extra stat boosts in mind, and it's roughly as difficult as the NES version if not slightly harder. This makes the remake friendly to newcomers without babyfying it for old fans. Some of the storytelling in these quests was pretty experimental for the time. At one point you find an old man who's trying to establish a settlement, and he asks you to help by bringing him a merchant who could handle the new town's commerce. I zipped back to the pub and recruited a merchant just for this purpose, named Monet. She thanks the hero for taking her on all those adventures I definitely took her on, then stays behind. Now, every once in a while, as you complete story triggers elsewhere in the game, the new town will occasionally grow richer and more populated. And if you talk to the NPCs, you see a whole side story play out, where your merchant runs the town effectively, then becomes progressively more power-hungry, until finally the townsfolk revolt and throw her in the prison. Luckily, in the process of trading with other nations, the merchant got her hands on the yellow orb at some point and tells you where she hid it. This whole sequence is pretty goofy, especially since all you have to do to beat it is create a junk party member, but remember that Dragon Quest games are meant to be beaten by children. And children don't think about playing optimally. You just know at some point some naive kid played this part more in the spirit of it. They had a merchant already in their party, or changed someone into a merchant, and actually saw one of their companions fall to their own hubris, and for that kid, this was some epic shit. The game is full of self-contained mini-stories like this, often involving people being tragically separated from their loved ones. There's this side quest early on where the Queen of the Fairies has cursed a nearby human town to eternal slumber because one of their men ran off with her daughter. To save them, you have to venture into the fairy cave, where you find the couple's suicide note, explaining that they both drowned together because they couldn't be married. When you show the queen, she lifts the curse out of remorse.
なんと、あんた男は地底の湖に身を投げたというのですか？私が二人を許さなかったばっかりに。
This theme of familial loss is most evident in the main plot, of course. The whole quest was kicked off by Ortega leaving his wife and newborn child to save the world, and the whole time you're gathering hints about the orbs from NPCs, you're also gathering tidbits about your father's past adventures. Several characters recognize a family resemblance in you, and tell you all about his acts of heroism. Ortega's presence is felt almost constantly even in his absence, and as time goes on it becomes clear that you might actually be gaining on him. If I remember correctly, this element of the story was present in the original, but greatly expanded for the remake, with several new flashbacks and more NPCs who remember him. After scouring every nook and cranny of the map, you can finally turn in the orbs and wake up the Everbird. This was always a satisfying moment given how many quests have led to this point, and now rendered as a cinematic cutscene complete with soaring orchestral score, it's pretty magical.
ラーミアは闇を払う希望の光。きっとあなたを導いてくれるでしょう。さあ、お行きなさい。なすべきことをなすために。
This allows you to fly to Baramos's lair, but you'll want to take a detour to get this busted hat first. The duplicate hat, well, duplicates one character's spells in battle, so you cast the same spell twice in one turn for no extra MP cost. It's kind of disgusting, actually. Baramos hits hard multiple times per round, but if you have a well-rounded party, he's not too bad. Just punch him in his big fat gut and head home to Eliahan to tell everyone the good news. Your mom is proud, your granddad is proud, the king declares a feast in your honor. Truly, The world is saved. We're not done yet, not by a long shot. It turns out Baramos was only a flunky of Zoma, Lord of the Underworld. This was the first big twist in a Dragon Quest game, waiting till you think you've beaten the game to introduce a whole new villain and a whole second world map to explore, though this one is mercifully much smaller. This section also highlights the characterization of your mother, who is probably the most well-written character in the game. There's this whole cutscene before you set out to fight Zoma, where she's proud of you but clearly worried out of her mind that you won't come back, just when she thought you were finally home to stay. All throughout the game you can go to her house to sleep for free, and if you go at night you can see that she stands outside her front door every night watching for you. They really get across the quiet anxiety of a parent putting on a brave face for her kid. And then this scene, where she hugs you goodbye, maybe for the last time, and clearly doesn't want to let go. It's awfully heartbreaking for such a comfy little game. To get to the endgame, you have to fly to the castle of the Dragon Queen, a godlike entity that I really feel like they could have set up better. She's never mentioned before this. She's dying, and in her last moments she gives you a sphere of light, right before laying an egg with her final breath. This sphere lets you safely jump down a hole, all the way down into, of all places, the Kingdom of Alefgard, the setting of the first game. This had to be mind-blowing back in the day when nobody went in knowing this was a prequel. You run around going through a slightly truncated version of the first game, getting a lot of the same quest items and ultimate equipment. You have to explore the continent and refight Baramos to save the goddess Rubis and make a bridge to the final dungeon. I think this might be the only game where you actually see the goddess in person instead of just hearing her talked about at churches. All the while, NPCs tell you of an adventurer with amnesia who looks just like you. Ortega's alive, and he's been here just days ago. In the depths of Zoma's citadel, you finally catch up with Ortega, locked in a fierce battle with a giant Hydra. Some other monsters get in your way before you can rush in to save him, and he's fatally wounded. He has no idea who you are, but he gives you a message for his child, if you ever happen to find her.
もしそうだが、アリア藩に行くことがあったなら、その国に住む我が子を訪ね、オルテガがこう言っていたと伝えてくれ。平和な世にできなかったこの父を許してくれ。
It's a somber moment, and I'm of two minds on how it was handled in the remake. On one hand, the voice acting and animation adds a lot to the pathos of the scene, and I remember the original mentioning Ortega far less often, so that finding him at all was a swerve, and the death immediately afterward felt rushed. The story is much better told here on the whole. There's just one detail that I miss from the original. Here you see Ortega fighting the Hydra in a cinematic cutscene, and it works just fine. But in the original it played out through an automated battle screen. Having a big story moment portrayed through the battle interface like this was striking and innovative at the time, and was imitated by countless JRPGs to great effect, most obviously Dragon Quest V, but also in several Final Fantasy games, the Mother trilogy, and Undertale if that counts. I would consider the Ortega death scene on NES to be one of Yuji Horí's most creative and influential bits of storytelling, and it's a shame that that aspect of it was lost, even though this version of the scene is great in its own right. The only thing that remains is to take down Zoma, which is easier said than done on hard mode. You have to fight 3 bosses to get to him, including the Hydra that killed Ortega and 2 undead forms of Baramos. This was much more difficult on NES, since there you had to walk through the dungeon and fight all 4 bosses on every attempt, where here you get a warp straight to the throne room and each boss stays dead. I still had to grind a bit to beat the Hydra at all. Just take out Zoma's barrier with the sphere of light you got from the Dragon Queen, spam buffs and healing spells, hope and pray he doesn't use his stupid cold breath, and the world is saved! You know, for now. The darkness is lifted from Alefgard, but with it the way back to the hero's world is closed forever. There's a shot of your mom all alone in her house in the credits. It's kinda depressing, honestly.
そなたこそ誠の勇者じゃ。
The king of Tantagel Castle thanks you for saving the realm, and bestows upon you the title of Erdrick, the ancient ancestor of the heroes from the first two games. The party lives on as celebrities in Alefgard, except for Erdrick, who walks off into the sunset to live a quiet life somewhere. Dragon Quest III is one of the all-time classics of the genre. Later games would improve on its approach to storytelling and world-building, and even in its remade form there are plenty of flashier RPGs out there, but few are this rock-solid. It has a perfectly paced, multi-section quest with tons of variety, fun battles, one of the best class systems ever devised, and its story is basic but well executed, paving the way for the stronger story focus of Dragon Quest IV and beyond. Be it the remake or one of the classic versions, you owe it to yourself to play this game. Play it yesterday. And I didn't even get into how good the music is.